Okay, today's May 10th, 1989.
I'll go along with that.
My name is Joe Todd, and this is an interview with Thomas D. Lemon.
Right.
And we're in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you live in
Osteen, Florida.
Osteen, Florida. Sir, when's your birthday?
11/16/16.
And where were you born?
Pine Grove, West Virginia. But was raised in Arkansas.
What part of Arkansas?
Monticello, Pine Bluff, Wilmer, southern Arkansas.
Why'd the family move to Arkansas?
My father worked for Standard Oil in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
They moved him down there on a pipeline job out of West Virginia. That's where we stayed.
Mm-hmm. When did you join the Navy?
When did I?
Mm-hmm.
13th of November, 1936. Friday, the 13th of November, 1936.
Why'd you join the Navy?
Get a job.
And why the Navy over the Army or the Marines?
You could spend 4 months in the Navy and get a promotion to $36 a month. In the Marine Corps, you had in the Army, it was slower than that. Really, I was like you. I went in the Navy for the money. $21 a month wasn't bad in those days.
And where'd you join?
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock. And where'd you go for boot camp?
San Diego.
San Diego. Had you done any work with the CCC before that?
No, that's one organization I didn't get into. Actually, I was working in the service station when I joined the Navy.
And you went by, how'd you travel to San Diego?
From Little Rock, we went by train. 3 days.
3 days.
3 days, 3 nights.
Tell me about your first impression when you got to San Diego. What'd you think?
I said, Lemon, what the hell are you doing here? You had 3 square meals a day at home. My father had the best job in southern Arkansas. He was a foreman. He was a boss man. And the company furnished him a truck to drive and all that sort of thing. We really had it good. We supported I don't know how many other families for free. My mother and father did. I could stay there until things got better, but I somehow or other wanted to see what the rest of the world looked like. I'd traveled through 7 or 8 states by the time I was old enough to join the Navy. I want to see what some more of it looked like. I was disappointed in the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't what I expected to see, and I don't really know what I expected to see when I first saw it. But it was a little disappointing because all you could see was water. That's odd.
Could you give me a description of boot camp?
Well, the first week, you're making friends. I had a friend that went to high school with, went in the Navy at the same time I did, so I didn't have much of a problem with friends. I had one already. You're so busy that really, it was kind of, in a way, you enjoy it, in a way you don't. I mean, it's a long 3 months, 13 weeks. That was an awful long time. And you never was in a position where you had to measure time like that before. I'm going to get out of this in 3 weeks. It's going to be easier. They tell me it is anyhow. Or 3 months. And it was. In a way, I enjoyed it. Actually, I stayed on a training station for 5 months because coming from Arkansas, and train ticket on the leave, 2 weeks leave, was $36 for round trip or something, $38 but I didn't have that kind of money. I'd owed some money and I didn't save up that kind of money. And I stayed, they had jobs, you could do like I worked in the firehouse. I just sat and answered the phone and strike the bell every half hour. And my friend, he was working in take care of the lawns and stuff like that. He had a spot down there towards the bay that he had to take care of. Wasn't down to the bay by any means because we weren't on the bay in San Diego. But we stayed for 5 months getting enough money to go home.
So after boot camp and you work with the firemen, what'd you do?
Then they put me on the counter wall and sent me to Bremerton. AOG-1 in Kanawha was.
Which one, what?
She was a tanker in West Virginia. It's named after a river in West Virginia, and they called it Kanawha River, but the Navy called it Kanawha. Here comes a landing craft up the river now. What I do? I was a deckhand. I wanted to do 4 years Navy and go home. So I had in mind to be an electrician when I went in the Navy, but I changed my mind about that. I said, heck with this, I'll just stay on this deck force for 4 years and get out of here and go. Before the 4 years was up, I realized we were on the verge of war, like a lot of other people. I figured I better get out of here and enjoy life a little bit. And I taught at a junior college in home, you see, and I taught there after dark, of course.
When you first saw the Oklahoma, what'd you think?
She's pretty ugly. She's in dry dock. She was in the Navy Yard, not in dry dock. She was in the Navy Yard. She hadn't gone to dry dock yet, but you know, you got red paint here and red paint there. And decks were dirty and junk laying all over and welding and what have you going on. She's pretty ugly. But I knew I'd never seen anything that big before. You know, in the way of a ship or what have you. Even ones that was, we'd see over in San Diego there, the carriers were quite a ways over. And I don't know, I always wanted to go on a battleship.
Now, did you request the Oklahoma?
No, I just requested a battleship. And second choice was something, a cruiser, probably a heavy cruiser.
So where were your quarters in the Oklahoma?
I was in the 4th Division, so it was on the port side aft. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 was up on the next deck. We were below the main deck, and they were above. 5 and 6 was above the main deck. Main deck are above.
How big were your quarters?
I've been thinking about that. Actually, it was half of the stern of the ship on the second deck, and the 3rd Division had the other half. They were big. They were big. But and our bunks were only 3 tiers high, but they were against the bulkhead, and then you had 2 tiers out here. They had quite a space, maybe 8 or 10 foot in between them. They were a lot bigger than troop ship bunks. There were a lot more room than there are on a troop ship, which I was on during the Korean War. During the Korean War, I was on a troop ship.
Now, you had lockers there also, didn't you?
Yeah. The first ship, the ship I was on as a passenger going up to Bremerton, we slept in hammocks and used our sea bags. We didn't have any lockers on it. The ship's company might have, but the passengers didn't have.
What, in the deck force, what was your average day?
From 6 o'clock till 5. You stop, 6 o'clock, and you knock off for breakfast, and you knock off for lunch till about 5 o'clock, 4:35.
From 6 to breakfast, what'd you do?
Scrub the deck. Every morning you scrub the deck. Well, there's some circumstances where you didn't scrub it, you sweep it, it was cleaning up. And every so often you'd take sand and bricks, what they call holy stones. You holy stone the deck every so often. It wasn't done every day because it was amazing that teak wood was 4 inches thick, I believe, when they put it on the deck, and then when they went to replace them in Bremerton, I seen them replace them there, and they were about a ½ inch shorter than this new stuff they was putting on. They'd been worn down by holy stone sand.
They have to level the deck or whatever?
They had yard workmen that done that.
Okay. How often would they have to replace those teak boards on the deck?
Well, some of them, I imagine, I'm just guessing at this now, would be the first time they went back in dry dock, it probably was some of them that had to be replaced. Something happened to them, you know.
Why do they have a wooden deck on the battleships?
You know, I don't believe I know. We had them on all the big ships, the cruisers, I said the big ships, you know, even the carriers had a wooden plate deck in those days. Everything out in the weather. Maybe that was the reason.
So, where'd you take your meals from the Oklahoma?
Right in the compartment we lived in.
In the compartment.
Yeah, you had mess tables. You had 6 probably mess tables, or 8, or more. They were in racks on the overhead. They pulled them up, put them up there, and after each meal, and your benches, same thing. Your benches went up there too. You get them down, and the mess cook would go to the galley and get a set of tureens like this, stood about this high with a handle on top, and a coffee pot that you get from the scullery. You got the same ones every time, but he'd get the groceries from the galley and bring them down.
Did you serve your time as mess cook?
Oh yes, sir. Not only there, but on the next ship I was on too. She was a passenger on it.
Now, tell me about being the mess cook in the Oklahoma. What exactly did you have to do?
One thing, when you wasn't serving a meal, you had to kind of stay out of sight to keep somebody putting you to work. We'd gather up the dirty dish, put out, set the table, you know. No cloth, just set the table, silverware and what have you. Which we got all that from the scullery. After we'd washed it, he goes up there and we had a pan till we washed it. They would scald it. And the next meal you go back and pick it up again. I say you got the same stuff all the time. And that was it. You were through though in an hour, you know.
And how long did that last?
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
Okay. You mentioned in Bremerton that you pulled up the anchor. It was gone. You pulled up the chain.
That was Vancouver, British Columbia, yeah.
What happened?
They didn't have there was a first, second division. They had the anchor. They'd done the anchor bit. They didn't have an anchor buoy on the anchor, which is well, in those days it was like a 4x4 or 6x6. It was just a piece about, 18 inches long, and was painted like red or some colors you could spot out there, and had a Manana line that was secured to the anchor with a short piece of chain secured to the anchor, and that would float to the top of the water, up to where you could see where the anchor was. Not that, well, it was just for things like that happened there. They didn't, the pin that held the chain together didn't have a piece of lead pellet in it to mash down to hold the pin in place. It's a tapered pin that went in there. And apparently it had come out sometime and they didn't notice it. And that pin come out, and of course when they started to pick the anchor up, the chain opened up, and that's all it was.
How much does that anchor weigh?
It seems to me like, now I'm probably way off. I want to say 29 ton, but I believe that's too much. I think that's way too much. I could be wrong on that. It's a big piece of steel.
Now, how many anchors on the battleship?
2.
2.
There's 2 forward, yeah.
And that's enough to hold the ship steady?
Usually just use 1.
Okay.
But there's a trick to that, or you take, for every fathom of water, you put out 6 fathoms of chain. I'm sure that's correct. That may not be correct either. I'm sure it is, though.
Okay. Now, a fathom is 6 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything? Oh, go ahead.
The theory there is, you see your anchor's over there. You're not pulling up on it, you're pulling this way on it, because that chain is so heavy, it seldom ever come off the bottom, You never get it off the bottom all the way to that anchor unless you're backing down on it. It's the only way you pull it. Just the current would never be strong enough to pull all that chain off the bottom. And you're pulling it into the ground instead of up. When you pick up the anchor, the windlass actually pulls the ship up over the anchor where it's right straight down there. Then it breaks loose from the ground and comes up.
How do you care for an anchor or the anchor chain? What maintenance do you have to do?
Well, first, when you're bringing the anchor up, after you get to the spot where was laying on the ground. The chain was laying on the ground. You just washed off with a hose. Just kept clean like that. And you can, by using, they didn't have a crane up that far, but you can pick those anchors up and bring them back up on deck to work on. There's not much maintenance to them, really.
How often would you paint the anchor?
Probably every 3 months, whenever they start showing a little bit of rust. You know, your ships in those days were just spotless like that one is right there. They're not now. You see merchant ships with rusty anchors and rusty streaks down.
That's in North Carolina over there, isn't it?
That's North Carolina.
Yeah. Anything out of the ordinary happened from the time you went aboard until Vancouver?
Well, I thought it was out of the ordinary. I mean, we about did run into a lighter. You'd call it a barge, probably carrying boxcars between Seattle and Bremerton, and cracked the rudder shaft. The rudder shaft was cracked when we started getting on their way out of San Francisco. Larry was there when they had the Golden Gate Exposition, and the Oakland Bay Bridge was not completed then. And the Golden Gate Bridge had just been completed, and when we went in to San Francisco. We changed anchorage because the current was running pretty good in there.
What's
and it
the
didn't
anchorage? Well, what's the anchorage?
For your designated area that you drop the anchor in, you know, where you go into anchor.
Okay.
And you wouldn't want to, the ship swings around the anchor, you know. It may go clear around it, but it usually swings one way and then back the other, and you wouldn't want to stop where you would be running into the bridge, piling through the bridge when you swung around, the current change when you swung around it. You're far enough out from that, and ships are far enough apart, they don't, unless, if they are close together, they do have ways of pushing them to make them go the right way, like a tugboat or something. There's no let them run jam up together. But we dropped the anchor again, and they had to send to Philadelphia for a shaft. We was in there 6 weeks, and the reason we was in San Francisco so long was then we went into Hunter's Point with a help of tugs, and the dry dock in Hunter's Point. There's 2 dry docks on the west coast you could put a battleship in. One was in Bremerton, one was in San Francisco Bay. And they put us in there and they put a new shaft, new rudder shaft in the ship. But that shaft come from Philadelphia Navy Yard, and it had to be routed. It was so long through across the United States where there was no sharp curves, you know, because it covered more than one flat car. It was on more than one flat car. And that was one of the things that took so long to get it. Because after we got it, it didn't take long to put it in. It had all its preparations made anyhow, except cutting it, you know, out of the bottom. It didn't come out. I mean,
Now you cracked the shaft when you hit the freight train?
no. They just don't know. As far as I ever knew, they didn't know why it was cracked and why they discovered it at that particular time.
Tell me about the freight train. What happened?
Well, really, I don't remember that too good. I'll tell you the truth. I don't. It just was a foggy morning, and somebody just got mixed up there, and I wouldn't want to lay the blame on anybody, even though the captain was kind of a hard luck person.
How do you put a battleship in dry dock?
Very gently. Tugboats, and of course you're using your lines on your capstans, which just a wind standing up in the air instead of sitting like this. You use both kinds of them. And you pull it in very slowly, and you've got lines just like going through a canal. It locks into a canal. You've got to be able to stop it, and you can't run your engines, so you got to have lines running aft as well as lines running forward to pull them in. You know? And there's people there that tells you when to slack or when to pull. You know, when to slack your lines. And I never saw a line broken going into dry dock. They're right on the ball. I've seen them broken in rough seas along the dock on a small ship.
So when they let the water out, what supports the ship? What holds the ship up?
Well, they got a blueprint of the bottom, of course, and those blocks were set in there to hit certain spots at the bottom of the keel, and your bilge is, you know, way out here, you may have a small keel on that. And as soon as they can, they get braces in there to hold it up. But it sets right flat on that bottom like it's supposed to, because the blocks were set up to match that particular bottom of that ship. That
How big
particular
these
ship.
blocks?
Oh, like 16 by 16, they look like squares, something like that. And up to, well, pretty long. Some are pretty long. That's it. I wouldn't want to guess at the length of it.
Now, is there a different set of blocks for each ship?
No, it's the same set of blocks, but they're arranged different.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not like it's not nestled down in there. You've got 3 rows of blocks here where you can work, where you can get to that bottom. Of course, there's going to be spots on that bottom that you don't get to, but you get to the biggest part of it. You know, that days they had the paint that we're using is not like it is now. Paint stays. They got a better paint now than they had then.
Whenever England went to war, England, Canada, in '39, was the Oklahoma at Vancouver?
Yeah. Yeah, she was in Vancouver when they went to war.
What was the reaction of the Canadians to the Oklahoma being in Vancouver?
Well,
Declared.
they said, you people we had to stay aboard for so long a time till they got that part of it straightened out about, we had to get word from the government of the United States and England too, I suppose now, I'm just guessing at that, I think, but we had to stay aboard for a couple hours before the ambulance could go ashore, because they didn't know whether they was going to let us stay or not. You know, under the circumstances, they were willing to let us stay, but we didn't know whether the government wanted us to, Commander-in-Chief wanted us to stay in there when England went to war, because we were in war with those people, technically, and we didn't know. Let Germany think that we were friendlier to those countries than we were to her at that time. The people, the Canadian people themselves, it was my experience that our money was no good. You couldn't order a beer. You could order it, but they wouldn't let you pay for it. Somebody else would pay for it. They had a small fair going on there, same way there. We just couldn't hardly spend any money. They wouldn't let us spend any money.
What was the reason?
They just wasn't tickled to have us. They knew we were on their side, you know. And they just tickled to have us there at that particular time. Americans were nicer than they are now, maybe. I don't know.
And when did you leave the Oklahoma?
September 1940. Come around the East Coast.
And you were paid off where?
Norfolk.
Norfolk. And did you stay in the Navy or?
No, I went out of the Navy. Like I said, I knew things were better then. I found me a job. Well, I come back when the war started.
When you heard the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor and the Oklahoma sunk, what was your reaction?
I said, I'll never go hunting again on Sunday. It's the first time in my life I ever went hunting on Sunday. A neighbor and myself was quail hunting there in South Arkansas. I thought, Lord have mercy, did I cause this? No kidding. I said then I'd never go hunting again on Sunday. But I knew I had to give them notice of where I was working. I had to give them a little bit of notice, and I had to go back in the Navy. Those 2 things I had to do. I knew the people on the draft board in Drew County, Arkansas, and I'd talked to them before about, well, why don't you send me a notice? You know, I'd like to go back in the Navy. Why don't you send me a notice? But they wouldn't do it.
So when you went back in, what'd you do during the war?
Aviation. They sent me to New Orleans, receiving station in New Orleans, which is a Coast Guard station. I stayed there 6 weeks and sent me to Boston. And I went in a squadron that used the same type airplanes out on that battleship over there, I believe. I haven't got close to that plane over there. I'd have to get close. And I flew the back seat of OS-2U-3s on inshore anti-submarine patrol.
Were you land-based or sea-based?
Yeah, it was land-based. We had 6 planes with pontoons on them, but the other 18, we had 24 planes. The other 18 had wheels on them. And we was flying out of Squam. just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
And you were flying what, submarine duty?
Anti-submarine warfare.
Anti-submarine.
Yeah.
And what kind of airplane were you flying?
U.S.S.
And who makes that? Who made that?
Pratt & Whitney made the engine, I think, but I don't really.
And what was your duty on board the airplane?
Machine gunner and observer. 30 caliber machine gun observer. We was looking for a submarine, actually.
Find any?
Flew for 10 and a half months, never saw one, and found 3 in one day.
And what'd you do when you found 3?
They're gone. They're gone in the North Atlantic.
Did you get them?
Yeah, I think so. Ship signs, I mean, they're pretty tricky though, they release oil and that sort of thing, make you think you got them, maybe. I think we're pretty sure we got them.
On the Atlantic, they're probably German, weren't they?
Yeah, they were German too.
Okay.
That was no novelty to us. We knew about the German submarines in 1940.
How often would you go out in the airplane?
They give us flight pay, so they try to arrange so we go once a month. Each one of us would have was qualified. You had to be able to send and receive a semaphore, and there's certain qualifications you had to meet. But each one was qualified. They managed to get us in 4 hours a month, so we get our flight pay.
What was flight pay in those days?
I don't remember, probably $20 or something like that. Might not have been that much. See, they wouldn't pay me. Now, that was funny. It had civilian paymasters there. And I didn't get any sea pay. I mean, I didn't get any, I had 4 years in the Navy, and yet they wouldn't pay me they were paying me for having 4 years in the Navy, but they had what they call sea pay. If you had so much time in the Navy, they'd pay you another extra percentage for that. And they said, no, you haven't been in the Navy a year yet. I said, what are you talking about? I've been in the Navy going on 5 years. But I never did. I think they still owe me for that. I'll let them have it. They need it worse than I do.
Yeah, I'm going to get back then. And after the submarine duty, what you
Well,
do
I
at
come.
that submarine?
They sent me to land, Florida, on a PV-1. That was a big 2-engine. Pratt & Whitney made that engine years before they were having an airplane to put it on. It was a medium bomber, and it had a bad habit of catching fire in the air. Finally got that worked out, and we went to Beaufort, South Carolina for about 3 months, and they sent us down to Key West, and I was down there for 7 or 8 months at Boca Chica, just north of Key West. And I volunteered for a squadron that was going to the Pacific. Went out to Oakland. Well, actually, I left out of Oakland, but we were at Moffett Field, where they sent us to Moffett Field out of Moffett Field is the San Francisco area there. And caught a ship out of Oakland. Went out to the Admiralty Island, into Philippines, Guam, occupation on Japan.
Now these bombers, were they Air Force, Army Air Force?
No, they were Navy.
They were Navy.
They were naval aviation.
You know the Navy had bombers.
Yeah, they had them. They had the B-20. We called them different from what the Army called them. Like your C-46, C-47, the Army didn't call them that. They called them something else. That was the Navy designation for us. And B-24, 4-engine.
And
Navy
so,
had some
what were your duty with the bombers? What'd you do?
machine gunner.
Machine gun. What machine guns did you have on there?
30 caliber, 30 and
30
50s. Yeah, they had 50s on the TV.
Were they air cooled or water cooled?
They were air cooled. You could burn them out there.
So anything happened in the Pacific, or you were?
Not really. We had some pilots there that was kind of gung ho, and we never lost any airplanes but we had one come back that had cut the top out of a coconut palm and had a big dent in the wing. Then we had one single airplane. We lost all of our airplanes except one. It was pulled back for an engine change or something on one airplane with a bombing raid on Lady. I was on Lady down below Tacloban, the town there, at that airstrip down there. That was kind of an interesting and exciting place to be. I mean, the Japanese were you had a lot of airplanes coming in, like the Army would have a lot of airplanes coming in, like fighters, fighter bombers. And the Japanese would get in a landing circle with them, try to land, suicide airplanes, try to land, and they'd have a bunch of people in the airplane. The last time they tried that, the mistake they made, they had a 2-engine airplane coming in. We didn't have any 2-engine airplanes in the air. Us with the Army of the Air Force. It was Army Air Force then. He was shot down when he was trying to land about 10 feet off the ground. They shot him down. The guy did with a .30 caliber in a Jeep. They was barring him in a Jeep and run alongside him in a Jeep and he landed. They shot him down and burned him. None of them walked away, I'll say that. They were all full of holes. If they got out of the airplane, we put them full of holes.
Now, what were they trying to do?
Infiltrate. They'd put the suicide people on the ground and our outfit there to sabotage the airplanes.
Were they ever successful?
No. We, that sounds too much like a sea story, though. We fought a pretty good battle one night there, me and a corpsman. And, of course, corpsmen weren't supposed to fight battles. His name was Montgomery. He was from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he's a good man.
Where was this?
That was on Lady. That was in our area where we had our tents where we lived. There was a report, come in that the Japanese had dropped a lot of paratroopers in the area, and so they called us out. And the next morning it was real funny. I mean, that night, Monty and I was the only two people that really, we got out in front and we were sorry because everybody behind us was loading their guns and shooting, and there wasn't nothing to shoot at. We didn't see anything to shoot. We scared. I told him, we scared they're going to shoot one of us. And I told him, I said, Monty, we don't open up on them. If they shoot one of us, we just don't have to open up on them. It turned out to be, wasn't paratroopers really, it was a drunken CB that had welded 2 or 3 clips together on a carbine. Instead of, he could shoot about, I don't know how many rounds, but it just sounded like it was a machine gun. But he had it rigged up as a machine gun. They finally corralled him down there. But I say it was pretty good. Well, the funny part was, it's bright night. The funny part was, next morning, we went up the line, and I went back up there to take a look, and here's shoes and everything else laying on the ground. Them guys had run out of their shoes when that CB opened up with that machine gun, that carbine of his. They started running, and they didn't, when they got out of their bunks, they really didn't. They just slipped their shoes on. They didn't lace them up and tie them up, and they just run out of them. They were scattered all over the place. That's part of it. Some people, even the bolts out of their gun was laying around there. They jerked the bolt out of their rifles.
Were you, the Battle of Coral Sea, were you involved in that?
No, I was here. I was still here in the United States when that took place.
So, did you take part in the invasion of the Philippines?
Yes, I was in that. I wasn't in that battle where the 4 carriers were some Jeep carriers or CVEs. I wasn't in that because I was on the Marblehead. I believe it's Marblehead is one of the seaplane tenders, and we had an admiral. I'm not going to call his name, but they always run when a battle come up. We run. We didn't run towards it either. We got back out of the way, and we went in later after that battle. The second battle of Lady Gulf, I believe it was. After that was over, we went on in, and we went ashore there on Lady, and then they moved us over to a little island across the bay there a little way. So.
What's the main purpose of a Navy bomber?
They're doing the same thing, at least they've done the same job that your Army airplanes was doing. They were also scout planes. You know, they were scout. They were looking. They'd give us a warning like when the air raid was coming in. We always knew when this Japanese plane's coming. We get word from some of our own airplanes, seen them, you know. And I had stories about they'd be flying 56 foot off the water, and the whole mess of Japanese airplanes would go over them, you know, never see them. Versus they had the blue paint thing, the top blue and white, the bottom was white on Navy airplanes, and kind of an off-white camouflage deal.
And what'd you do in VJ Day?
I was on occupation.
Where were you stationed there? What did you think?
Just out of Tokyo, out of Yokohama, really. It's close to Yokohama with Tokyo, and we called it Yokosuka Air Base there. And actually, I was the second man ashore, and I walked up this hangar, and there was a Japanese standing there, airplanes out there, sitting out there with a carburetor pulled off of them, machine guns off of them, the props off of them, and he turned all that over to me and took off, and we didn't see a man for probably over a month after that. Women and children, that's all we saw. And we wanted work done, which we moved from there up the other side of Tokyo to an airfield up there, and we had 500 children, you might say. They were 12, 13 years old girls, all out there picking up glass off the runway. There was no men, you know, we couldn't to do any work.
Why were there no men?
They were hiding from us. They didn't know. They didn't trust us. Well, I'll admit we did shoot at them, so we were.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
There's a lot of people won't agree with me on some of the things I've said, probably, but I let what I remember, not what they remember. It's always different.
Mm-hmm. What's your address?
Actually, I live on 180 Oak Drive. And my address is Post Office Box 154, OSTEEN 32764.
Okay.
That's not my age.
Okay.
That's the zip number.
Yes.
3276.
Okay.
I do have a phone number. I didn't put it on my cards, but do you want?
Yeah.
407 322 7821.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I really did enjoy my time in the Navy, and I should have stayed till they buried me.
How would you compare the Oklahoma to the other ships, or is that a fair question?
I really couldn't answer that question. You see, you mean I never was on another battleship, and there was more discipline on a battleship than there was on anything on your smaller ships. I mean, that was, you see, we were allowed to wear dungarees in the Navy Yard, or if we was going over the side to scrub the side or something. But ours was strictly a white and blue uniform Navy. Where your other, some of your ships that was uniform today would be dungarees.
It looks fine.
It does?
Yeah.
How long do you want this to be?